How do you describe what your career is?
A path of serendipity, I guess, because, again, I had other ideas and I found myself doing something very different that I was planning at the beginning.
What did you plan to be?
When I was, a young fellow going to medical school in Italy, you got there at 18 years old, so rather young. I knew two things. One, I want to do research, but still have patients contact. That's the reason why I went for an MD rather than a PhD. And two, I want to make an impactful difference in the life of people. So I was very, naive and a dreamer. And
idealistic.
Very idealistic. Yeah. I thought that, cancer was, the most impactful science to get into. And that's what I had the idea to go for.
Huh. But you knew that you wanted to be in medicine and that you wanted to have an impact. What did you do to prepare yourself to be appropriately positioned so that you could be accepted into medical school?
So I had very clear from the very beginning that, making life of individual better was my goal. And I remember my grandfather that said, "Are you absolutely sure that you want to go to medical school? Because this is not a job, it's not a profession, it's really a mission." As a matter of fact, the old physicians were all monks, were all people that dedicate that just entire life to this. So you're not going to have a life. And I was pretty adamantly sure that, that's what I want to do.
So that was your mindset?
Absolutely.
So you go to university in Italy.
Yep.
You study medicine.
Yep.
Then what happened?
So, in Italy, you had 6 years to go through medical school. And then you have 4 years of, residency program. You cannot do research the first year because it's very intense. You have to do all the basics. But as soon as I could, the second year, I'll start to look for an internship to do research. And I stumbled upon this gentleman that just came back from the University of Chicago where he went for a sabbatical. That was a pediatric gastroenterologist. And again, I had no interest in doing that.
No, you were interested in cancer.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he said, listen, do you really want to be impactful? We lose many more kids with diarrheal diseases that all the other diseases combined. 5 million kids will not make it by the end of the year.
5 million.
That's right. We're a little bit better, but still we're talking about a huge number of kids that they died for infectious disease, particularly diarrhea disease in the first 2 years of life. Wow. And then, that was really a revelation to me. So that become,
you changed course.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I saw the value. And of course, when you talk about diarrheal disease, you talk about infection. So,
which is in keeping with the work that you're doing now.
Absolutely. But again, I didn't know that time.
No.
Nobody knew about the microbiome. There was no such a thing. My only desire was to understand how we cross-communicate with pathogens, with microorganisms that make us sick, to try to understand what kind of tools they use so that we can disarm them. And that was pretty much the focus of my initial career. And in Italy, because of the school where I was, they were very strong in human physiology. So I focused in my first parts of research career on the host, part of the coin. The flip of the coin being microorganisms, I asked my boss, where should I go to learn now the other side of the moon, so to speak? And he said, there is one place that you should go. The best place is in Baltimore, in the United States. It's called Center for Vaccine Development. You should go there to learn how microorganisms crosstalk with us. This was 1988. I was supposed to be 4 months there. I'm still in the United States.
So you had no idea that you, at early on in your life, that you would wind up living in the United States?
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. The plan and the money that I had available was barely enough for 4 months. So there was absolutely no plan.
Well, you've done a good job of stretching it out.
Well, I'm telling you that there have been tough times, during the winter, which we could not afford the right coats, and we had to stretch the money. And then myself and my family went through a harsh time. Mm-hmm. But, again, with the support and help of, the colleagues in the United States that they saw the value to keep me there, eventually, we end up to, stay and... no regrets whatsoever.
So you start to study diarrhea in essence, and but it's a very difficult malady to address and put a stop to.
And again, we
it must
still
have been very challenging.
very,
Yeah.
and again, we still lose the battle with microorganisms because it's many weapons you threw to them, they threw back the counter weapons, and then they remain as a major issue in developing countries for sure. We made some strides, of course, because we understood a little bit more a variety of business. But I'm telling you, and it's another serendipitous parts of my career, the more I was trying to focus on diarrheal diseases, the more the results of my science pushed me out of it. But I was trying to be disciplined and said, listen, Alessio, you need to focus on diarrheal diseases. And, systematically, the results pushed me in different directions, mainly in chronic inflammation, autoimmunity, and so on and so forth, until at the end I gave up. And I said, there must be a reason why God, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, tells you got to go to that direction, and I give in.
Well, and now when you take a look at the work that you're doing, it truly is having an impact. Or are you concerned that maybe it's not having the quite the same kind of impact that you had hoped for?
No. I mean, again, once again, the goal is really to improve quality of life and to give that little contribution to science and move, our knowledge forward to achieve the goal that I was telling you, longer and healthier lives. I have to say that, again, science sometimes is incremental, sometimes it's transformational. You don't choose. And I was blessed to stumble upon some transformational science that is really changing some science paradigms.
Okay, and what was that science? Because not everybody will know your background. Just tell them what that was.
Well,
what was that transformational moment?
So it was stemming from a tremendous failure trying to develop a vaccine for cholera that was, and still is, one of the major culprits of diarrheal disease in children. And the outcome of that, exercise was miserable. It was a failure, pretty much. But that failure led us to a discovery of a new molecule that led us to the discovery of zonulin. That probably is the most important contribution that I give to science so far, because this seems to be a molecule that is involved in so many diseases.
Well, and if it can inform people to make changes in their life, let alone having to deal with it from a biological or a physiological perspective, you've done your work.
Yeah, I mean, again, science is Pandora's box. You open one and then there's another one, so we'll never stop.
Yeah.
But I have to say that, there are some specific milestones that we're able to achieve, meaning that, now we know that to develop these conditions, genes and environment are not sufficient. So you have to have a leaky gut, and zonulin is involved in that. You have to have an immune system that is hyper-belligerent, and you have to have a microbiome that goes off balance, and they all interact with each other. So that gives us new target for possible intervention to try to stop these epidemics.
So somebody who's looking at you going, oh yeah, I want to be like you. You're out speaking at conferences, you're traveling around, you do a wide variety of things, but they have no idea what your typical day looks like. What does a typical day for somebody who is a researcher actually look like?
Well, I wake up rather early. I changed my lifestyle in line of what, we were discussing before. So I mainly walk to and use public transportation to go to work. I have been, becoming humble enough to understand that it takes a village of complementary expertise to make a difference. So my role is to build these teams of very talented and dedicated individuals that with humility, they sit around the table trying to really improve the quality of life for people that they entrust in their work. And I'm trying to facilitate, this kind of science and clinical care. So I spend a fair amount of time in, teaching and, managing, a large group of scientists and clinicians that they are focused on this kind of roles.
So do you spend your time in the lab, or is it
that
more that you're interacting with your team members, discussing, analyzing, trying to make sense of what they are, the information that that they're gathering?
So I am in the lab, but unfortunately I don't have the time anymore to take a pipette and do an experiment. That for me it was the most rewarding part of what I was doing when I was a researcher. So my contribution now is more intellectual and come up with ideas, design the experiments, advise, how to troubleshoot the outcomes that in general are not what you expect.
Right.
So,
but you couldn't do your job if you hadn't done that work in the lab earlier on in your career.
Not.
Because you wouldn't be able to make sense of what you're
absolutely
seeing.
not.
Yeah.
If I have to give an advice of a young fellow that is interested in getting medicine, I would strongly advise at some point to find some time to spend time in the lab, as well as the people that spend time in the lab to find some time to spend time on the ward, so that you really understand, what you're doing and for whom, because otherwise you lose track of what is the purpose of all our, professional life here.
Which is to improve the quality of people's lives.
Absolutely.
It's been an extraordinary career.
Yeah, I had a good ride, I have to say.
Well, I don't think it's over somehow.
No, but, again, I am at the point in which, I'm over the edge and I'm now starting to go downhill in terms of the last span of my career. But it's been a joy and a privilege, really, to have given that little contribution that I was able to.
Well, and you helped set up what appears to be a really exciting time in research.
Well, again, what is left when you retire is the legacy that you leave behind. For me, legacy means a school, a team, a group of individuals that have really been forged to continue that kind of path. Because otherwise, when you decide to retire and do something better in life, like, I don't know, making wine, it's one of my dreams. You don't want all that investment dissipated, and I'm in great hands. I have the privilege to really work with an extremely talented individual that I'm pretty sure that will continue, that line of research.
Well, good, and I hope that your career inspires others to follow similar paths.
I hope so too.
Thank you.